Hello, I'm Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, 2049 Outfitters.
At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We're here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, and 6 a.m. on Saturday in Germany. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California.
Tonight, Pam is doing a profile on Jacki Cochran. We'll be back in 8.3 seconds. Oh.
Hey,
Hi,
Dawn. Glad you could join us.
Jacki Cochran was an American pilot. What's that?
I'm going to sneeze. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's over now. Oh, and we got more people. Hello, hello, hello.
Yep.
Happy Flag Day. Yes, it's my daughter's birthday too. And Flag Day. Anyway, yeah, go ahead. Welcome.
And Scott.
Welcome, Janie. Welcome, Scott. Good to have you.
Okay. Jacki Cochran was an American pilot and business executive. She pioneered women's aviation as one of the most prominent racing pilots of her generation.
I'll go ahead. She set, here it is, numerous records.
Yep. And was the first woman to break the sound barrier on May 18th, 1953. Cochran was the wartime head of the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP, which employed about 1,000 civilian American women in a non-combat role to ferry planes from factories to port cities. Cochran was later a sponsor of the Mercury 13 Women's Astronaut Program.
That's from Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Hey, Cliff.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Cliff.
Yes. Hi. You're a wonderful person, too. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. So, Pam, she sounds fascinating, like a fascinating woman. What did you learn about her?
Well, there are some interesting and kind of conflicting aspects to Jacki Cochran. Like you mentioned, the Mercury 13 program, she was both supportive and she spoke against it in Congress. So it's a little weird, and we'll see more of that as we go through a few of the websites that I found, and we've been kind of out of it this week, so it's gonna be a little bit short. The yeah, go ahead. I guess share this website, and we'll talk about them as we come across them.
Okay.
You gonna do it?
I don't
Just
have
click
the
button.
Oh.
That one. Nope. That. Yep. Up.
Oh, that. Oh, shit.
Good job.
There we go.
All right. So this all got started when I saw an article on Facebook, and I was like, oh yes, Jacki Cochran, and it does have some really good information about her here, and she actually worked pretty much her whole life. She's done an incredible amount of things and has an incredible legacy, which we'll see as well. But I just was like, oh yeah, I got to do this sometime. So I've saved up a whole bunch of these. Some of them came from Cliff. Thanks so much for that, Cliff. And we'll get through them eventually. But she was involved with beauty and flying and part of the military. And she actually holds some records still for flying. It's really quite fascinating. She got her pilot's license in 1932, and then she was setting speed records. Kind of wild. So I think this is pretty neat, but it's a little bit short. So I'm going to go ahead and go to some of the other pages, Wikipedia, which are a little more accessible. I don't know. Oh, I guess this is public. So Olden Lens on April 9th put together this little article, and they have a nice picture of her here.
And she looks so much like a character that I saw in some science fiction show. Like as if they did up that character to look like her.
It's quite possible. I think a lot of things are, inspired by actual people. Right. All right. So, of course, you can go to the Wikipedia page.
Because, quite frankly, I remember that face talking, and we wouldn't have had anything from that era of her with her talking, especially not in color.
We might. I mean,
but not in color.
She died in 1980.
Right, but not looking like that.
Yeah, that's true. This was
so that's why I'm thinking I saw a character that looked a lot like her in a military uniform.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pretty sure that that character, whatever I saw, was based on her somewhere.
Oh, got it. Okay. So some of the contradictions are going to start with the early life part there, as you see. But they do go into that she was a pilot and a business executive. She pioneered women's aviation as one of the most prominent racing pilots of her generation. She set numerous records and was the first woman to break the sound barrier, like Jeff said. She and Nancy Lowe were actually developed two different groups, which became ultimately the WASP, Women Air Force Service Pilots. All right. And yeah, Jeff talked about that. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about, like, right away we see that her name is Jacqueline Cochran, but also Bessie Lee Pittman. So it's kind of wild how she was born Bessie Lee Pittman, and how do we get Jacqueline Cochran out of that, or Jacki Cochran as she was more commonly known. She basically kind of separated herself from her family and got married and really preferred to be called Jackie or Jacqueline. And that's where Jacqueline Cochran came from.
So she married, so especially at the time, she took the
Yeah.
last name.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then I don't know where she got, guess she wanted to be a Jacqueline. So
Yeah.
she just called herself
And
Jacqueline.
you know, if she's flying, that might have been, especially if she did any, I didn't see anything about acrobatics here or anything, but she did an awful lot of things involved with flying, racing and setting records. Maybe that was it. The racing was kind of her pen name, stage name. I guess stage name they call it whenever someone performs. All right, so right away we kind of see how she's almost two different people, because in her early life she was, you know, fairly normalish, you know, one of five, and they were moving around a lot because her father was setting up these sawmills and so forth. So, you know, it would be set
And
up and then move on.
they actually said that she was working since she was age 6. So
Right. Yes. So, yeah. And yeah, she married very early, 13 to 14. She was 13, 14 years old. Married Robert Cochran. So right away, we've got the Cochran name. And she had a son, but he did not live very long. He died at age 5. But she did not stay with Mr. Cochran very long, but she kept the name. And she, yeah, began using Jacqueline or Jackie. She became a hairdresser. So what a contrast between, like, being a hairdresser and then going on to flying. It's like they're very kind of different things.
well, my guess is that she became a hairdresser to survive.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah,
then
I mean, it makes sense. It makes perfect
and then
sense.
she did flying because she wanted to.
Yeah, right. And I think they talk about here what happened with the flying. So here she is. She's pretty good looking. She's a hairdresser. She goes to New York and she gets a job at a prestigious salon at Saks Fifth Avenue. Not exactly what we think of when we think of Jacki Cochran, if we know about her flying experience. All right, so yeah, here it is. So she denied her family and her past, but she remained in touch with them and provided for them over the years. So here we have this, you know, in the family, not in the family. It's kind of strange how all these kind of contrasts started appearing.
Well, if she's Saks Fifth Avenue, this is the 20s, you know, 20s, early 30s, then she's probably developing a sophisticated persona.
Oh yeah, she would have come into contact with all kinds of different people, I'm sure.
So,
which would have been very different from her upbringing, her family life,
right,
in the panhandle of Florida. So yeah, she's already kind of becoming this kind of conflicting person in a way,
or at least a persona of that she presented to people.
Yep.
But she still kept in touch with her family, so it's not like she divorced them.
No, but it was kind of like, huh, interesting. She wanted to hide that from the public, the early chapters of her life. I guess it would make sense so that this, you know, this persona of, you know, about being out in the public, a businesswoman and an aviator and someone, you know, fairly well, you know, gaining prestige from the salon, probably.
Right, yeah. And the location, yeah. She probably had to develop an air of sophistication and a persona of sophistication.
Yeah, seems very likely. So she did eventually remarry, but she kept the name, the Cochran name. All right, let's see. So yeah, usually I read more of these. Sorry.
Yeah. And
oh, here it is. She began taking flying lessons at Roosevelt Airfield. Yeah, you had something?
well, she married someone who was the CEO of RKO
Oh, right,
in
right,
Hollywood, which made movies.
Yes.
So, it was she kept her glamour, which is probably why she kept her name.
Yeah, and it says he was one of the 10 wealthiest men in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In the world. So they probably lived pretty darn well.
Mm-hmm.
Helped her establish cosmetics. And I think the flying was part of the advertising for the cosmetics. Let's see, what does it say here too? She, in the early 30s, she learned how to fly an aircraft in 3 weeks. And she soloed. Within 2 years, obtained her commercial pilot's license. That's a pretty big deal, right? Commercial pilot's license?
Yeah, except we're talking 1930s, so learning how to fly means that you spent 3 weeks and didn't kill yourself.
I see.
I mean, literally. I mean, there wasn't like the FAA at the time. There was, it was like driving a car in the early days of cars. If you could afford it, you could drive it.
Got it.
So yeah, it was.
So old Lum, who was the husband she married, was pretty savvy and helped her with her line of cosmetics, Wings to Beauty. She flew on an aircraft around the country promoting her products, and eventually he used his Hollywood connections to get Marilyn Monroe to endorse Cochran's line of lipstick. So a pretty heady crowd, I suppose, for this woman.
Yeah, she was really positioned well, or I'll say she positioned herself well.
True.
Because I doubt that sort of thing happens by accident. You have to really go get and be someone, because it's one thing to take advantage of opportunities, but usually opportunities don't happen unless you create them.
I've seen it both ways.
Yeah.
So she starts racing. Looks like 1934 here. In 37, she was the only woman to compete in the Bendix race. And I actually have a slight connection to that. My father used to work for Bendix Westinghouse. And in fact, we went to England for a year because we swapped families from the company and swapped houses and everything. It was quite the experience. But, started racing with this McRobertson Air Race, worked with Amelia Earhart, and opened this race to women that year. She also set new women's world speed record. Yeah, some of these records she still holds, folks. She is still the top in some of these places, in some of these competitions. All right. By 38, she was considered the best female pilot in the United States. She won a bunch of records, like we said. 5 Harmon trophies. Oh, they might have a picture of it here. Yeah, hard to see there, but if you want to go to the wiki page and look those up, I recommend that because this is pretty darn interesting stuff. Sometimes she was called the Speed Queen, and she held more speed, distance, or altitude records in aviation history than any other pilot. As of the point of when she died, she was pretty much
not
big
any
deal.
Female pilot.
No, any pilot. Any pilot. All right, and they go into the 99s. I think mostly because of Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, women's flying group.
Yeah, she was not a founding member. Well, the 99s is pretty popular if you're in this area at all.
In fact, some of the people that you've already profiled were members of the 99s.
Okay. She was a president from 1941 to 43, instrumental in ensuring women pilots would be able to participate in the newly founded Civil Air Patrol, as well as WASP. And we have a little bit more about that a little bit later on, because she formed one group, and another group, I think it was the woman's name was Nancy Love. Anyway, we'll see it here. So yeah, the one of the reasons for putting together these women to fly was so that they could do the non-military tasks and free up the men to go and do the military tasks for the
combat roles.
Yeah, combat roles. Right. So they would like shuttle aircraft around. It says, let's see, before the United States joined World War II, Cochran was part of the Wings for Britain, an organization that ferried American-built aircraft to Britain, becoming the first woman to fly a bomber, a Lockheed Hudson 5, across the Atlantic. So they were actually taking them from the factory over to the war effort.
Yeah, in this case, not our war effort, but
no, not at the
it
time.
was part of us building stuff for England,
And so supporting our allies,
which
basically.
they actually paid for not in cash, but with technology. They shipped us all of their technology.
Well, I think that's to entice us to join.
Well,
that was to entice us to join.
Also
eventually.
because our factories weren't getting bombed. We were all the way across the Atlantic, so we could build stuff. We had resources. We couldn't be cut off from resources because we had our own resources. So they used us as, as a basically a factory, and they paid for us by giving us the technology.
Because it was a lot of intellectual property eventually, right?
Yeah, but it was basically England and Germany were the tech leaders of the world at the time.
Okay.
And so we got all of England's tech, including radar, which the Germans didn't have yet.
Oh, interesting.
And we built it for them and shipped it over to them, and that's gave us our boost.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that part of it, but I know a little bit about it.
So she was part of that, but not, not part of the tech part. But she sent the airplanes over. She flew the airplanes over, and it meant that guys were free to get shot at. But
brilliant, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she was part of the Royal Air Force as a volunteer for a while, then worked for the British Air Transport Auxiliary (ATA), recruiting qualified women to join them.
Yeah, because the British were already doing that because their men were busy flying over Europe getting shot at.
Okay. So she eventually attained the rank of flight captain, equivalent to a squadron leader in the Royal Air Force or a major in the U.S. Air Force in the ATA. Fascinating. So she wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt to introduce a proposal to start flying a women's flying division in the Army Air Forces in the United States. She felt that qualified women pilots could do all of the domestic, non-combat aviation jobs necessary to release more male pilots for combat. Combat, you're right. That's the better word.
And here's the thing. We weren't in the war yet, but we knew it was happening. We knew we were
coming. Yeah.
It was coming. So we were getting ready for it.
So a lot of the things that were happening with her had to do with, like they say here, she pictured herself in command of these women. And there's some speculation that maybe that was part of why she supported the Mercury 13 and then didn't support it, because she did speak in Congress against women being involved with the astronaut corps. So it's possible that, she wasn't going to be one of the main people in there. So that was why she was talking against it eventually.
Yeah. Well, and she wouldn't be an astronaut because by that time she was 50. She was about 50 years old, plus or minus a year, depending on.
And at that time, they weren't really
and
bringing in people.
Right. Over. So she would never.
They do now. They do now.
Yeah. But they needed, people who could handle something that might be falling apart around themselves.
Yeah.
But,
well, one of the qualifications, because most of the women in Mercury 13 had more flight time than the men, but one of the requirements was to have a degree in engineering, which was actually closed to women at the time.
And also they had to have time in jet fighters, which also was closed to women at the time.
Yeah. The jets specifically?
Yeah. They basically made requirements so that women couldn't be.
Yeah. Right. All right. So let's see. Where else are we going here with this? So there's some good stuff here, but I think some of the more important things have to do with creating these groups, because she is it Olds or the other guy? Yeah, she was trying to get this going, and was told that, okay, we won't do anything until you get back from England, right? Well, she was in England, and what did they do? They started a group.
With someone else in charge.
Yeah, with someone else in charge. I think that's on here. Yeah, Nancy Harkness Love. They put her in charge of the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron. Nice, huh? And so Cochran came back immediately from England. Like I said, I think this is part of her whole thing, that she really wants to be
in charge,
the head honcho here.
Yeah.
So when she's not, she isn't happy about that.
Mhm.
So yeah, so she came and started this other group, Women's Flying Training Detachment, and eventually they did merge to become Women, um, the Wasps.
And in
Air
the
Force
merger,
Service
she
Pilots.
became the director.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she eventually got what she wanted.
Yeah. I think she was well, and they had a quote. They had a quote at the beginning of this one on Facebook. When she set her mind to do something, she was a damn Sherman tank at full steam.
Mhm.
So this is kind of her mo.
Mhm.
She wants it, she goes for it, and she gets it eventually, or kind of dies trying.
Mhm.
All right, so award of the Distinguished Service Medal. That's just one of them, and they got a whole list down here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't quite get to all of these, but I think you want to come here and read that because they do talk about her being hired by a magazine and joining the Air Force Reserve as a lieutenant colonel, flying records. She did get to fly the new jet aircraft. They said she took the first one over the Atlantic, right?
Mhm.
And to go supersonic. Yeah. Boy, at 47, she decided to challenge the world speed record for women, then held by Jacqueline Auriel. I don't know that name.
No, me neither.
We'll have to look it up.
Mm.
All right, so yeah, she she tried to borrow an F-86 from the U.S. Air Force, but was refused. She was introduced to Air Vice Marshal of the Royal Canadian Air Force, who gave her permission to fly
Right.
one.
Okay. So yeah, and that's part of
But
women.
later.
Women were not allowed to fly fighter
Yeah,
jets.
This is 1952, so
Right.
way past
Hmm.
World War II, right?
Right, but we didn't have jet fighters in World War II.
Ah, okay.
And so basically, someone who was on her side basically introduced her to a Canadian guy who could do it.
Well, she knew a lot of people.
Hmm.
She knew a lot of people, clearly. Okay, so let's see. What else do we have here? Yep, Chuck Yeager, encouraged by then Major Chuck Yeager. She had a lifelong friendship on May 18th. Oh, this is where she gets to break the sound barrier
Hmm.
with that jet, with the Royal Canadian Air Force jet.
Hmm.
Okay. She was a consultant to Northrop Corporation. Just an amazing, amazing legacy. First woman to land and take off from an aircraft carrier.
Hmm.
First one to pilot a bomber across the North Atlantic. We talked about that, I think, right?
Hmm.
She was the first to make a blind instrument landing. You know what that is, right? I don't know what that is. Is that you can't really see, but you can read your instruments?
Yeah, you just read your instruments. It's kind of like it simulates being in fog or, being in the cloud cover.
What do they do? Cover the windows?
No, they put a hood on you.
Ah.
Basically, so that all you can see is the instrument panel, and if you look up, you fail.
Ah.
So you have to look just at your instruments and just do it all via instruments.
Okay. That's still a thing, right?
Oh yeah, it's training that everyone has to go through. I mean,
to get that particular license.
Well, yeah, there's
right?
visual, rules, VFR, visual flying rules. That's before you get that. Then there's IFR that you have to qualify to be able to fly and land an aircraft without looking outside. You don't have to take one off because if you can't see out the windows, you're not taking off. That's kind of a given. Or they assume that if you can fly it and land it, you can get it to altitude before you hit something. But generally, if you can't see out the windows, if you can't spot your airplane from the terminal to walk to it, you're not flying. That's just in general.
And I'm asking Jeff because he had a pilot's license once, and he knows way more about this stuff than I do. Your dad was
he was a pilot, and he owned a couple of FBOs, which is basically places, fixed base operator, where they service aircraft and sell aircraft back when you could still sell aircraft.
Right. Got it. Okay. She was the only woman ever to be president of the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, French. She was the first to fly a fixed-wing jet aircraft across the Atlantic. We keep talking about that.
Okay, why did they say a fixed-wing jet aircraft? Because
none of them are flexible wing, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's the difference? Fixed wing versus
versus helicopter.
Okay, I see. No jet
I mean,
helicopters. Got it.
We ended up with jet helicopters, but certainly not back then.
Got it.
They weren't even a thing back then.
Wow, she was the first pilot to fly above 20,000 feet with an oxygen mask, and the first woman to enter the Bendix transcontinental. Some of this is repeated.
Right. And 20,000 feet isn't that high when you think of jet aircraft. Like,
no, it's not.
Airline,
not now, certainly.
Airliners fly between 35,000 and 42,000 feet.
Yeah.
But if you're above 12,000 feet, the pilot is required to have supplemental oxygen. Because above 12,000 feet, the air pressure is low enough that people tend to nap out.
Yeah.
And the passengers can do that. It's just bad day for everyone if the pilot does that.
Right. And it says here, she still holds more distance and speed records than any pilot living or dead, male or female. Pretty impressive. Oh, and look at this. She flew the Goodyear blimp out of Akron, Ohio. I actually am from Ohio. And when I used to go from Torrance to Huntington Beach when I worked at Boeing, I would see another one of the Goodyear blimps. There's only 3 in their
she was
their fleet. That's the word.
She was about 50 years old then, so she probably just said, "I want to fly one," and they said, "Sure, let's use your name in the papers." You know,
that's actually a fascinating vehicle. We might go into that someday. That'd be kind of fun. There's a lot of cool stuff about it. I rode a bike up and talked to them once, and that was very interesting. All right, so Mercury 13. We're now involved in space stuff. In the 60s, she was a sponsor of them. But 13 women pilots passed the same preliminary tests as the male astronauts. In fact, some of them did even better. Well,
I think a lot of them did better.
Yeah, the same doctor who. Oh, Dawn has a comment. Yeah, there's a whole list of them, Dawn, at the end of this wiki page. Yeah, I didn't know either. But yeah, the same doctor who tested the Mercury pilots, the Mercury, male pilots, tested these women as well. And when some of the men, like in the isolation tag, well, they just couldn't handle it for very long. But Wally Funk was like, I'm hanging out. She was very happy for a very long time.
Yeah, we did a profile on Wally Funk.
Yeah.
And
all right, so it was canceled. NASA didn't like it, but I don't see where they. She did. Okay, here it is. They convened public hearings before a special subcommittee of the House Science and Astronautics.
Oh, it is generally accepted that Cochran turned against the program out of concern that she would no longer be the most prominent female aviator.
Yeah.
So she was protecting her title, maybe. I mean, don't know, but that's what people were saying then or are saying now. I don't know.
Yeah, it's likely that she was very, very interested in being the head honcho, the center of attention, and it wasn't necessarily going to happen. She was getting a bit up there for.
Right, and she was never going to be an astronaut. And if there was a female astronaut, basically, they would eclipse her.
Yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense, considering what she is, possibly her personality. All right, so she did go on to the public hearings and say, yeah, I don't think it's such a good idea after all. Determine whether or not the exclusion of women from the astronaut program was discriminatory. Don Glenn and Scott Carpenter testified against admitting women, and Cochran herself argued against bringing women into the space program, saying that time was of the essence and moving forward as planned was the only way to beat the Soviets in the space race. So, yeah, here it is. None of the women who passed were military jet pilots, nor did they have engineering degrees, which are the 2 basic experiential qualifications for potential astronauts. Women were not allowed to be military jet test pilots at the time. On average, they did have more flight experience than the men. I mean, some of these women had like 1,000 hours, whereas the men had, several hundred.
Yeah. I
mean, it was that big of a difference.
Yeah, and the engineering degrees and the jet fighter pilots were all a part of the PR.
They had the right stuff.
Yeah, it was the right stuff PR thing, and that was generally a constructive thing. Now, the pilots who became the astronauts were really fantastic people. I mean, they had,
Absolutely.
but they were picked because they met these things. That's why Chuck Yeager wasn't picked,
He
because
wasn't picked either.
he didn't have a
He
degree.
didn't have the degree, right?
Yeah, but he was arguably a better pilot than any of the actual astronauts. Because, I mean, he had a lot of experience in being in an airplane that's falling apart around you, because
he flew a lot of the experimental vehicles.
Right, yeah. And
I've heard it said that the most important part was knowing how to get the hell out.
Yeah.
Understanding egress. Yeah, here it is. NASA required all astronauts to be graduates of military test pilot programs and have engineering degrees. In 1962, no women could meet these requirements. And that was it. Here it is. John Glenn and Scott Carpenter, who were part of the Mercury 7, also did not have engineering degrees. But they were both granted a degree after their flights for NASA. So that's weird that Chuck Yeager was excluded as well, because John Glenn and Scott Carpenter were in.
Chuck Yeager was a cowboy,
wasn't a team player.
Wasn't that. He wasn't like young with, crew cut, he
didn't have the right stuff.
Young boy, type of thing.
Yeah.
He was someone who would spit on the sidewalk, that
a little
sort of
bit
thing.
rougher. Okay. Well, and they would have to, present, just like Yuri Gagarin. I mean, he was a face for the Soviet program, just as our astronauts were the face of. And I think a lot of people didn't really want to see women die in a horrible accident, have a horrible death in a horrible accident, which we've seen now. But anyway, the hearings were
and that happened in Soviet Union. We just didn't hear about it until decades later.
Yeah, they lost a bunch of people. All right, so the hearings to investigate the possibility of gender discrimination actually did happen a couple of years after that. Anyway, so they talk about her political activities, and she was involved with the Republicans, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. And let's see, I didn't read too much of this part either. So, she ran for Congress. I remember that. I did read that part. In California, 29th Congressional District. I don't know where that is. Do you know where that is?
No.
Okay. So she was, she appeared there, but she didn't really make it. She didn't make it. She defeated a field of 5 male opponents to win Republican nomination in the general election. She lost a close election to Democratic candidate, the first Asian American Congressman, Dalip Singh Sond. Oh, interesting. They weren't that far away though.
Yeah.
54,000, 51,000. So your vote counts. Absolutely go and vote, everybody. All right. So legacy. It's a lot. Yeah. Oh, we got another comment?
Yeah. Seen a huge blimp years ago in Brisbane. Whitaker's Chocolate. I guess that's what they were advertising.
Oh, interesting.
Very slow, but all lit up from inside. Yep. Fantastic sight at night. Yeah.
Yeah, blimps are amazing. We'll have to do an episode on blimps.
Well,
all right.
We kind of sort of did in that we talked about JP's airship to orbit. But yeah, we should talk about blimps, because
we'll have to look, because I don't remember JP's airship to orbit. Did we?
Yes. Oh, and one of their very, very early shows.
See,
but
I don't even remember. We're heading into 4 years of doing this.
Yeah. Well,
so we've done a few. This is 190 videos on our channel.
I mean, heck, we could do the whole thing from balloons to zeppelins to blimps.
I like it. All right, so Jacki Cochran died on August 9th, 1980 in Indio, and she was with her husband till his death 4 years earlier. She was a longtime resident of the Coachella Valley and is buried in Coachella Valley Public Cemetery. She regularly utilized Thermal Airport, so I'm pretty sure she was practicing there for different races and stuff. Sounds like she did that till she died. Oh, despite her lack of formal education, she had a quick mind and affinity for business, and her investment in cosmetics field proved a lucrative one. So she did well. Yeah. All right, very cool. And we're about halfway down this page. Look at the military awards.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few here. Distinguished Service Medal Citation. I am going to reference you to this page so you can read them for yourself. Lots and lots of different links here. And I would recommend delve into as far as you would like.
Mm-hmm.
First Distinguished Flying Cross Citation. Second Distinguished Flying Cross Citation. I don't even know what these things are. Do you? You know more
Not
military
really.
stuff than I do. Okay.
This wasn't really my field. I dealt more with the hardware, not the...
Okay. And other awards. For many countries in the world, she received citations and awards. France, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And what else did they say here? She probably had some Canadian recognition, too. An annual air show called the Jacki Cochran Air Show is named in her honor. Takes place at the Jacki Cochran Regional Airport, which is where? Come on, people, tell us where it is. I guess we're going to have to look it up. Okay, all right. Are you looking?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I will continue then. Other honors, Golden Plate Award, induction into the San Diego Air and Space Museum, National Aviation Hall of Fame, and on and on and on. This is like amazing. I didn't even know half of this stuff. Not even hardly any of it, actually. There are a couple of pages I want to reference.
In Riverside County.
Oh, so, Riverside. Okay, so out here.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for looking. I
think
up.
it's as a civilian facility, it was called Thermal Airport. So that's where she.
Oh, the Thermal Airport where she practiced. Okay. Yep. So they just renamed it to her name. Okay. All right, I'm going to mention Mercury 13 quick. I think we have talked about the Mercury 13. But yeah, again, weird contrast between supporting and not supporting, and the thing with the family and names, and I think we got another.
Wow, Cliff says saw parts of the Goodyear blimp at Uvard Hazy. Yeah, yeah, and the Goodyear blimp used to be a common sight for me growing up because they were based like in Southern California. They were based
in Carson. I used to drive by every day.
Yeah. Well, and they also had another blimp facility in Tustin.
Okay.
And that's where they would repair it.
Ah, okay, I see.
So yeah, it kind of
because in Carson it's just sort of tethered and it floats around. Right. Tether. I mean, it's open. It's right. Open air.
Yeah, but they actually had a blimp hanger.
Yep, I remember.
There, in fact, last time I was by, they still had the blimp hanger, even though that air base was gone.
Yeah, all been redone.
But yeah.
We got another comment.
Oh, okay, Janie.
Oh, Janie looked it up for us. Yay!
Is Southeast San Fernando Valley.
Oh, that's near here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Wait, Houston, Texas? What?
Oh.
I'm a little confused. Oh, she's got another one though. Drove by Carson. Yep, on the 405. Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so the 29th Congressional District in California is Northeast San Fernando Valley. Apparently there's a 29th district in Houston, Texas too.
Got it.
But okay. We're looking at the San Fernando Valley.
I'm pretty sure she was in California. Yeah. So there's a really cool website called sierrahotel.net, and they had a whole bunch of good stuff on her. It's a little bit old, August of 2020, but they have some really nice pictures here and a little more information. That's the picture I picked up for our graphic tonight. Kind of neat, huh? And I think it covers a bunch of the stuff we've already. Oh, here it is. In the 1930s, she accepted an offer from a friend to go up an airplane ride. So, and we kind of know that the progression of things like airplanes, and now we're seeing it with space stuff too, is like we have the barnstormers and then the rich people fly planes. So she probably took a ride from someone who was fairly well off.
Yeah, because they're the ones who would actually have an airplane.
Had a plane, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if someone flew for commercial reasons, they might have flown, but not.
They didn't back then.
Oh, they didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, some good stuff in there. Like I said, we're seeing it again right now. We're seeing the folks that have a lot of money and they can go up in spacecraft today. I actually wrote a paper on it like 30 years ago. All right. So a little bit more about the things we've already looked at. What a beautiful picture of her. And it makes sense with the cosmetics that she would look very nice. You'd have a very pleasant image. A lot of stuff. Accomplishments. First woman to compete. Only one to compete in this one. Worked with Amelia Earhart. I saw another comment.
Oh, Don, I remember standing at a window high up in Erie View, in the Erie View building in downtown Cleveland, looking down on a blimp parked at the Cleveland airport. Probably the closest I'll ever get.
Yeah, that blimp is actually normally located in Akron.
Mm-hmm.
In Akron.
I actually never went up in a blimp, but as a kid,
it's a rare thing to do.
Yeah, as a kid, when it's on the ground and the weather was okay, this was in the 70s, so they were a bit looser then. They would actually, if you drove up and they were feeling it, they'd let you climb in and look around.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Ah.
Like I said, this was the 70s, so people are a lot less concerned about stuff back then. And Janie, your profile. Oh, well, thanks.
Thank you, Janie. We like doing them too. Boy, is it interesting to learn so much about these people that I never knew before.
Yep.
All right, so you got kind of a list form. I kind of like that. Good pictures here. Really, really good pictures of her. Mm-hmm. She was definitely about image and promoting her business, and yeah. Oh, I think this was for the women. Yeah. All righty. First woman to break the sound barrier. Yeah, we've seen a lot of this. Mm-hmm. One of only 13 women pilots who managed to compete and pass the same preliminary tests as the male astronauts of the Mercury program. Sadly, the program was canceled. And it was interesting, too, because a lot of the women were smaller, took up less oxygen. And, there were a lot of advantages to women going up. It just wasn't done at that time.
Yeah. And the guys, none of the guys were tall.
Wally Funk is.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're about there. Oh, there's even a stamp. Look at that. They don't really talk about the stamp, though. That's too bad. I just love this page for the pictures, and of course, there's some information here too. But I think we've kind of seen.
When we're done with this, why don't you post that in the comments? The URL.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, this isn't exactly the one that you'll see the most, but the Wikipedia page, very common. I could put both of them there.
Yeah. Just because this one has a lot of good pictures and a lot of good lists of stuff.
And this part down here is just part of the website. So let me grab this. Copy. Put that in there. And this should be a clickable link when I put it in there for you. All right.
And quite frankly, we'll put a link for the wiki page in there, but quite frankly, just look at wiki and then her name,
or even just Jacki Cochran. That's what I did. That's what I looked up.
Yeah.
I didn't even spell out Jacqueline. So, all right. So there's the wiki page. And it's kind of funny because once I learned about her, I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting if there was some kind of story or series about her being the ancestor of a character in Star Trek named Jeff and Cochran, which I see now the spelling is not exactly the same. But Jeff and Cochran actually showed up in a couple of episodes. One of them here, the first time he was this, he was the first to fly warp in an episode that comes later. But here he is. He's stuck on this planet. He's crash landed there and he's all broken up. And this being that's on the planet kind of, anyway,
puts them back together.
You might have seen the episode.
Yeah. And
then, so this was played by Glenn Corbett. Wouldn't it be fun, though, to kind of make stories up about, and his so-and-so was Jacki Cochran.
His ancestor was.
Yeah, right. And here's Zephyr Cochran as portrayed by James Cromwell as the guy who broke warp. Right, that's what I have.
Okay.
So we can come back to us. Let's see, where are our notes?
There's our notes.
Let's get them here, because you're up next. Oh, we got one from Janie. Go ahead.
For your information, Jacqueline Cochran, the Jacqueline Cochran stamp was issued March 9th, 1993.
Fabulous. I love that. Everybody's so good about going and looking up stuff for us. It just makes this show so much better.
Yeah.
All right, some stellar events this week.
Yep. June 14th through June 21st. June 14th, first quarter moon, and the moon is on the equator and at apogee. And
that's today.
Yeah. and Mercury is in superior conjunction.
I think it's in the evening right now, right?
Yes,
Mercury.
which means it's already gone from
Yeah.
from our sky at least.
Yeah.
And it's Flag Day in the U.S. Which and June 15th, Moon is at descending node. June 16th is Father's Day here.
Maybe other places too. I don't know where they.
Yeah, I don't know.
Celebrated.
Yeah. And Spica is 1.2 degrees south of the moon. June 17th, Mercury and Venus are in conjunction. June 20th is the summer solstice. And also Antares is 0.3 degrees south of the moon.
Solstice is when the sun is at its highest point in the northern hemisphere of the planet Earth.
Yep. And
you read that one? I don't remember.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And oh, there you go. Again,
141. That is most of the Earth. How cool is that? And thanks.
Yep.
I
was going to make a joke of, but you didn't list them, and I can just see, Janie, I can just see you copy pasting 141 things into our comments. So please don't.
You're supposed to link. Okay, next one.
So June 24th is the full strawberry moon.
No, that's not June 24th.
June 21st.
21st.
Full strawberry moon, and I kind of was thinking the moon wearing a beret, but Pam already told me that my sense of music is far enough off that
I didn't have to tell you that. You knew that.
But, also on June 21st, the moon runs low, and it's our Friday night show. And we will have a guest whose name will be revealed shortly. Find us Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. What
inspires you the most for the coming week? All right, and if you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, or astronomy, we'd love to share our live. Join us again next Friday. It's June the 21st. We have a guest. His name is, how do you say that? Larry. It's Larry.
I think it's Bartozak.
We're going to have to ask him.
Yeah.
He's joining us. Jeff actually heard him speak at ISDC 2024 on space elevators.
Yeah, specifically talking about using lasers to power the elevator.
Interesting idea.
His thought was that the cabling that it would take to, to stuff power all the way up to the space elevator would weigh too much and would be too fragile, and would probably basically vaporize from the amount of. I mean, you'd have to have cables this big around, just to provide the power for it, and that much weight would be hideous. Because we're talking about using carbon fiber for the structure, and then very light, very, and then you're, hunkus of metal this big around. Also, yeah. So he was talking about using lasers to get the power to the vehicle. But after I talked with him after that thing,
Janie Becker says, "Talk about a tangled cable."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I talked to him after his talk, and he has so many topics that he could that he can talk on that I don't actually know what he wants to talk about this upcoming Friday. So we'll find out.
He gave me a list, and it was like, holy smokes, there's like 8 things on here.
Yeah. So
I don't know yet.
We will cover how he got interested in space and stuff like that, and how we got into it.
We'll ask him.
Yeah. But then we'll go on to something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be talking to him before then, test things out, all that. But yeah, folks, have a great week. I see some comments. See you next week. Yes.
Yep.
See you next week too, hopefully. Strawberry doesn't suit you, Jeff.
Not even a strawberry beret?
It's a raspberry beret. All right. Anything else from you?
No, I think I've caused enough chaos.
Okay. Well, continue to watch for your comments as well. And thanks very much for being here. Cliff and Dawn and Jamie
and Scott.
I know Scott was here. Yeah. Yep. We really appreciate you coming week after week and helping us out as well.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Janie.
Have a fabulous week. We will see you next Friday. Good night.
Good night.